Good morning. Ruth Inman here, back again for office hour for Social Media Pulse Academy. I'm really happy that you are joining us here today, or if you're watching the replay, really happy for you to watch the replay. Today, we are going to go back to basics. We are going to go all the way back, pretend that it is your first day running social media for a business or organization, or maybe you're taking over the social media channels that have been up and running for a while for somebody else and they've been managing it and you are taking over. You've got the keys to the castle and it's your job to develop a social media strategy from scratch. And we're going to strip back the layers and strip back all of the complicated mess that can happen when you are taking over a social media strategy from scratch. Every single one of the steps that we're going to talk about today can be its own lesson or its own course in and of itself. But like I said, we're going to keep it simple. So if you're new to social media, or if you've been doing social media for a while and you just want a refresher, today is a great day for that. If you're here, I would love for you to go ahead and drop in the comment in the chat where you're joining us from, or if you have any questions that you want me to talk about today. This is my first day doing office hours solo, and usually I have panelists or I do interviews. So it's just going to be me and the screen, and the more interactive we can be with the chats, the better it can be. So I am ready to go. I hope you are too. Here we go. We are going to go, like I mentioned, back to basics, starting a social media strategy from scratch. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about social media strategy is that there are a lot of ways to get to an end goal. Just like there are a lot of different routes that you can take when you're planning a trip somewhere and you get different map options and you can take different routes, you can do the same thing with social media. Usually the stops that we take along the route for social media strategy can be the same. Different people might take a different approach and do things in a different order than I'm going to suggest today. But that's the beauty of social media, and that's the beauty of our community, that we can take different approaches to get to the same place. But one of the things that I like to think about when I think about social media strategy is if somebody comes to me and I'm working on channels for the very first time, it's really eager to go in and just, you want to post, right? It's exciting. The social part of social media is posting and engaging, and we really want to dive right in and do that. But if you really want to take that strategic approach to social media, the best thing that you can do is take some time before you just dive in and start posting and do some planning. And I love this quote from Abe Lincoln because of that. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Well, Abraham Lincoln, he's wise in a lot of ways, and this is one too. The more time that you can invest in planning and doing things the right way, the sharper that axe is, the easier it is going to be to chop down that tree. Looking in the chat here, and I see Kaylin and Audrey, both of whom I had as students at Oklahoma State University, and now they're off doing great things in their career. So really glad that you guys are here today. I think you might have heard this quote from me before, possibly. Okay, so these are the steps that we're going to go through today. As I mentioned, each one of these steps can be their own lesson, own set of lessons, own course in and of itself. So we're going to stay at that really high level. But if we want to have conversations and get really into the details of each of these steps, or if we want to pause and have deeper conversation about any one of these steps, so we can do that. That's the whole point of open office hour. I've got an agenda. I've got kind of my slides set up. However, we can do it in any order or any time frame that we want. So make sure, like I said, the chat is open. Go ahead and comment if you have any questions as we go. So the 5 steps that I like to take in this order when I'm starting social media strategy from scratch are: Setting goals and objectives. You have to figure out where you want to go. Why do you want to be on social media? That's the most important step before you consider anything else. The second step, choosing which networks you actually want to be on. Now, different people do this one in different order. Sometimes people decide what networks they want to be on before they set goals and objectives, right? Because if you're setting goals and objectives related to social media, they're probably going to be very platform specific. And you can kind of do that in a different order, but I like to think kind of globally first, then think about different networks. Then we're going to conduct an audit of what we've already been doing on social media, if there's much of a presence there already. Next, you're going to plan that content, not post the content yet. We're just going to plan it out. We're going to think about what we need to be posting on social media and come up with that, planning that content. And then what will the posting strategy be when we actually start posting? Then you get to analyze, test, run some campaigns, see how things are going, and then iterate. So those are the 5 steps that I like to think about, and then you just go back to the beginning and kind of start over. That's what iteration is, right? You're starting over and doing things over again. But if we really peel back the layers, these are the 5 steps that we like to take when you're starting a social media strategy from scratch. Let's dive right in and talk about that first step of setting goals and objectives. As I mentioned, this is where you really think about, why do we want to be on social media? What are we trying to accomplish with social media? And different organization types will have different goals, and probably some goals will be a little bit more tied to your overall business goals than others for different organizations. And we have different reasons why, as a business or organization, we want to be on social media. But thinking about, why do we want to be on social media and what social media will help us do? So, if we think about some of those reasons, they really fall into one of 3 categories. So, again, if you're new to social media, this will be a great way for you to get that baseline understanding of social media objectives. And if you've been doing it for a while, it's a nice refresher. If we've gotten in the habit of posting a lot and managing social media, just that reminder of the 3 different types of objectives we can have on social media. The first of which is awareness. So, when we're talking about social media awareness, this truly is just getting your message in front of as many people as possible. That can be your objective. Your objective can be to grow your fans or followers, to increase reach. Things that are just, we are blasting our message, and we want as many people to be aware of us as possible. This relates pretty closely to our marketing funnels. If you're a social media marketer, chances are you also understand just marketing in general. And this really relates to that marketing funnel, the top of funnel awareness, having people just understand that we are who we are, or aware of a challenge that they might have, and you have the solution to meet that challenge, etc. All right. So, our next type of objective that we have is engagement. And engagement in social media terms is the stuff that we really think about as the bread and butter of our social media activities, what we want to do when we post. So, we're encouraging interaction with our content. And different people might have different goals for different types of interaction, right? We might want video views. We might want people sharing our message. We might want people liking our message or commenting. You can have specific goals related to that engagement, or you can just talk about engagement and lump it all together, right? Any type of interaction is considered engagement. And I see I have somebody who's joined. Mandy, are you trying to come on screen, or did you just hit the link to join the conversation thinking you're going to join the chat? If you want to come on screen with me, that is completely fine. See my friend Mandy in the green room here. I'll give her a little bit of time, maybe send a little private chat to the green room. Okay, we're back. All right. Let me know, Mandy, in a private chat if you do want to come on screen or if you're just kind of joining in to listen in the background, that's fine too. Glad you're here too. She sent me a little chat. All right. The third social media objective that we might have is conversion. So, conversion is kind of that gold standard of what we really want to accomplish with any kind of marketing, right? It is we're driving a specific action from a social media user. That might be to convert to your website and make a purchase. That might be signing up for an email newsletter. That might be, in the case of Social Media Pulse Community, one of the things that we're trying to convert on right now is members joining the community. So, right now, this would be an example of if I give you a call to action right now during this live video or during this replay to visit Social Media Pulse Community and click the join now button or the sign up button or login button up in the top corner of your browser, or a big call to action button right there on the home page, and you convert and you sign up because I am encouraging you to with this social media video. That would be conversion. Now, ideally, if I wanted to measure that conversion from this specific video, I would give you a very specific URL or UTM tracking code so I could actually track how many people converted from this specific video. But for the sake of just kind of chatting about it today, that is an example of a conversion objective. So, three different types of objectives that we can have with social media. Awareness would be top of funnel, engagement, kind of middle of the funnel, people engaging with our content, and then conversion, driving that specific action. And here's some examples of how, if you're writing out those objectives, you could write objectives related to different things. So, increasing followers, that's an awareness objective. We're going to increase followers on Facebook by a certain percent or by a specific number. Now, I will add that only one of these examples, there's 6 examples on this slide, only one of these has a time parameter. To be a really good objective, they all need to have a time parameter. We all need to be, measuring our objectives within a certain amount of time so that we can put a line in the sand and know if we've accomplished that. So that could be quarterly for you, or that could be within a certain number of weeks or before an event. But having a time parameter, if I wanted to improve these examples, because isn't that the way it always goes? You write up some examples and then live on air is when you realize the examples could probably be a little bit better. So, increasing followers or having an average post reach. Some people think post reach is a vanity metric. I don't necessarily agree with that. If your objective is awareness and getting your message in front of as many people as you can to grow an audience, that then later that audience can engage and convert, then absolutely, I don't think it's a vanity metric. It's a strategic objective that can help you get different goals, meet different goals and objectives later. Increasing link clicks by a certain number of percent. That would be an engagement objective. People are engaging with that content. Having a certain number of people use a branded hashtag. Now, that could be considered an engagement objective, people engaging with that, or it could also be considered a conversion objective because they're taking that specific action. You can sell a certain number or certain dollar amount or make a specific number of sales online, driving traffic from social to a website. And something I will point out about some of these conversion objectives, particularly as it relates to things that happen on your website. There are tools that can help you measure that, one of which is our recently released ROI tool in the Agorapulse social media management platform that provides automatic link tracking on links with UTM codes and tracking that can talk to your Google Analytics if you have goals set up in Google Analytics, and you can really, really measure that impact of social media and measure conversions quite a bit easier. So that is one little plug for a tool that can help you measure conversion much easier. or having a certain number of people sign up for an email newsletter, right? That's a conversion objective. So these are some examples. If you have examples of social media objectives that you're working toward with your social media platforms, would be happy to have you drop those in the chat for other people to see, or if you've got questions or are thinking about writing social media objectives, this is a good time. This is a good time to do that. Hey, Paul, I see you joined me in the green room. Are you here just to help manage, or are you trying to come on screen? We'll see. There's a private chat button down in the bottom of the middle of the browser there. If there is something that I don't want to go ahead and put you on the spot and put you on the screen, but if you're there and you want to come on screen, you can. Okay, JD, I see a question in the comments from JD, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and show this up here. JD says, do you see storytelling and lifestyle posts still being a strong way to get people to engage with your organization and later convert to dollars spent with said organization? Or is the trend shifting? I do think that universally, I think that, not to nerd out too much, but there are, kind of three legs to the storytelling stool. You've got to have, if you go way, way back to Aristotle and rhetoric, you've got to have um, ethos, which is someone speaking with authority, a credible source. You've got to have logos, which is facts and true, the meat of it. And then you also have to have pathos, which is that emotion. So absolutely, I don't think the trend toward storytelling and emotion will change anytime soon, but I do think the delivery of those stories and the delivery of those will change with trends, right? The TikTokification of everything, and being a little less true, like that emotional, more touchy-feely type storytelling. I see that shifting more toward an upbeat, positive, fun, dancing music type of storytelling. So storytelling in and of itself, I don't think is going away anytime soon, but I do think, again, that delivery of those stories. And at the end of the day, people want to know, like, and trust you. And they know, like, and trust you if they see your organization as being human-like, and they want to see those human characteristics of an organization. So long story short, no, but I do think just the kind of tenor of our storytelling will change. But if you have any other opinions about that, go ahead and comment, and I'll see if what I think resonates in any way. And then Carolyn made a comment. She says, what kind? Well, kind of a vanity metric. We still have a lot of clients focusing on growth. Yeah, that I totally agree with that, because you're more likely to have not higher engagement, but there's more opportunity for people to engage with your content or convert if more people see that content. Now, it has to be the right people. You have to grow your pages and have the right kind of people who are following those pages, who are more likely to engage and convert later. But absolutely, I don't see increasing followers or increasing reach is a vanity metric. It's a strategic objective that can help you get to things later. Now, if you've been doing social media for a while and all you care about is that a certain number of people saw your post, then you kind of have to ask yourself, who cares, right? Why do we care if we spend a ton of time on social media and a ton of a ton of money on social media, and we're not increasing sales or not increasing whatever that conversion objective needs to be for the business? Then it becomes a vanity metric. But if it's a step to get a different conversion objective down the road, I tend to agree. All right. Love the questions. Absolutely. Keep the questions and comments coming. It is great. It makes it a little bit more tolerable for me and the others watching. If it's not just me kind of talking to myself the whole time, the comments help make it a little bit more engaging. But let's get back to steps to social media strategy. So we're going to go over 5 steps today. We've gone over one step. Now let's move on to the second one. And this one we'll go through a little bit more quickly. While I tend to take some time on goals and objectives because sometimes that is a newer concept to think about awareness, engagement, and conversion. The idea of thinking about which networks we want to be on is something that we all kind of inherently, just the fact that we're human beings and we engage with social media networks and they're on regular news all the time, we're pretty much aware of what's available to us. But here are the things as a social media manager, someone who is doing social media strategically, the 3 things that you need to consider when you're choosing those networks that you want to be on. Audience, audience, audience. No matter what the uh, no matter what the marketing communication medium we're on, audience should be first and foremost in our mind. Kind of back to JD's question about storytelling. I guess it also depends on your audience, depending on what's going to resonate with them. However, just thinking about, in terms of thinking about our social media networks and where we need to be, you think about those goals and objectives. We want people who are going to sign up for a newsletter. That's our conversion objective. That's what we want people to do. So then you need to think about, okay, the people we want to sign up for our newsletter, where are they hanging out? And what social networks have the right features to help me accomplish whatever my objective is? So, thinking about audience first and foremost, super, super important. And then before I go on to time, just it came up really quickly. Kaylin asked, best tips for identifying your audience. Okay, so this is something, Kaylin, that is really, really important as a part of a social media audit, which we'll talk about next, but not in too much depth. So best tips for identifying your audience and or who your target audience should be. Doing an audit to see who really is following you and diving in and doing some of that audience research. And then the next thing that I really think is critical to help you identify your audience is thinking about audience personas. And we're not going to talk about that in detail today. Maybe I'm going to make a note to myself to go into an audience persona lesson for a future office hour, but really diving in and getting in the mind of your ideal customer. What are their challenges and pain points? What do they like? What do they dislike? Building out your audience personas based on that or ideal customer profile. People call them different things. And that will help you figure out also who that audience needs to be. So thinking about best tips, if you're saying a best tip, think about your audience pain points. What goals are they trying to achieve? What does your organization provide, and where do those things overlap? I think is the best first step in doing that. Okay, time. This is one that gets a little bit tricky because you might think or know that your audience is hanging out several places. Your audience is hanging out on, just for the sake of being cliche, because examples that are a little bit universal are helpful. Your audience might be hanging out on Facebook. Chances are, even in today's society, your audience is on Facebook. There's 2.91 billion people who visit Facebook monthly worldwide. Here in the United States and then Canada, I think I saw a statistic recently, 362 million people in the US and Canada every single month on Facebook. So they're still probably on Facebook. They might also be on YouTube and they might also be on TikTok, right? Those are very, very common platforms where people are spending time. But you, as a social media manager, might not have the time to dedicate to a really, really fleshed out strategy on all 3 of those platforms. Those three platforms have some really unique characteristics. on what content needs to be posted there, and you might not have the time to devote. So then you need to be strategic about, okay, if I had to pick one, where should I start? So thinking about time is a really important part of social media strategy when you're choosing networks. Then finally, what resources do you have? This kind of goes in with time. Time is a resource, but also the resources that we have are personnel, what skills you have. YouTube is a great place to be. And it is, it's the second most visited website in the entire world. However, the time it takes to do really well produced videos for YouTube is something that not everyone has, or skills rather. Well, and time too, right? They're both resources. Is skills. Or do you have the resources to create what is needed? You might not even have the equipment needed to film videos. So, those are some things that you need to consider as well: personnel, skills, resources. And so those are some three things that you need to consider in summary when you're choosing networks: is you need to consider your audience, you need to consider what time you have, and you need to consider what resources you have. All right. This third step is one that I kind of, foreshadowed earlier. We were talking about audits. Audits are very um, can be. They can be very hard and complicated. They can be very simple. In our legacy social media manager school, and upcoming in some of the courses that Phyllis is working on revamping, we have a great kind of checklist for an easy social media audit that you can do, particularly if you are trying to do an audit to gain a new client as part of a proposal. It's a really nice step to add. But we surely are going to have some additional, more fleshed out content about audits in the future. So today's discussion of audits is going to be very, very, very top level. And that top level, the things that we need to consider are really, what have we done in the past? What is working or not working? We can make it really complicated, but at the end of the day, those are the two things. Those are the two questions that we're trying to answer with the social media audit. And very, in a, very oversimplifying here, but there's really four things that I recommend people look at when they conduct a social media audit. You want to look at your profile health, and this is the one that is the easiest to skip because it's very, very tedious to go into the settings. Facebook alone, for example, your page settings, there are, I think, more than like 40 little tabs that you can click through on your page settings to customize things on that social media network. Very tedious, but also a really important step. Some of the things that you want to consider when you do an audit is you want to consider your usernames, and you want to consider usernames across platforms and how consistent they are, because oftentimes we're setting up our social media channels at different times. We're adopting different social media channels at different times, and there can be some inconsistencies with what we're doing as far as our profile names. So consider your usernames. Also, that profile completeness. I have a little story to tell on Social Media Pulse community. So we recently kind of did this, but not necessarily an audit, because we're a new community. We launched in March. And so we had some existing properties that we were converting to Social Media Pulse community channels. And then we have some new channels that we have adopted. And we just needed to grab some usernames and secure those so that we had them and we had claim to them so we could start using them. And on our Instagram profile, we grabbed it and we customized it as much as we could pre-launch. And then it was after launch, we had to go back and go in and fix some things that weren't completely complete on that profile. Another example is, you grab like uh, a TikTok handle and you're not actively posting on TikTok, but you've grabbed that handle and you're sitting on it so no one else can get it because it's branded for you, and then you decide you're going to start posting on TikTok, chances are you're not going to remember to go back and completely fill out that profile. So I say you should do audits on 2 or 3 different occasions. When you take over a page or a channel, you should conduct an audit. You should do it as benchmarking every 6 months or year or quarter or whatever cadence works for your organization. That's the second time you should do an audit. And then the third time you should do an audit is after something big happens, like you run a big campaign or seasonally something has changed, or there's just something that triggers that audit that it's time for us to take stock. So those are the 3 times you should do it. And you should really look at, again, profile health. And you can read there. The slides have been up for quite a while. And if you're watching the replay, you can pause to look at all the different things that you need to consider regarding profile health. Also branding. And I remember back in the day, if there's anyone who's been doing social media for a while, you remember how tedious it was when we had to update cover images like monthly or every other month. It was that was a thing that you would do. You would update your profile picture and you would update your cover photo every month or every couple of months, and then there's a chance that things become not closely branded across different platforms. And so that's something it kind of brings back when I think about branding. That's the thing I think about, although certainly in today's day and age, we're not changing those things nearly as often as we used to. But just making sure that our branding is consistent across platforms. Okay, I've got an anonymous user. They're probably posting in the Facebook group. And so I'm sorry, it comes in without your name. But someone says, I'd assume that the audit is necessary for clients you work for as well. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you should be doing audits really, really routinely, both as part of you can do it as part of a proposal just to say, hey, this is what I looked at on your social media channels, and these are the few things that you can do that I can recommend really quickly that would help improve your pages, and then we can hit the ground running on. But absolutely, as benchmarking every 6 months, once a year, quarterly, whatever cadence you set, doing audits is really, really important. Thank you for that comment. I absolutely agree. And then finally, this is the part that most people think about when they're thinking about conducting audits is auditing the content itself. What's posting, what's working, what's not working. Again, oversimplifying because each of these steps can become pretty complicated. But at the end of the day, these are the things that you need to be looking at when you're conducting an audit. So if you have questions about audits, feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat. As I mentioned, it is a topic that we could spend the whole hour or more talking about, but we'll point you to some resources in the future. I am working on a strategy course for social media that's gonna launch soon-ish, within the next few months, that will have much more detailed information, complete with worksheets and templates for conducting audits. So that'll be there coming soon. Here's the teaser. Our fourth step for starting a social media strategy from scratch. Remember, this whole presentation today is about you're just going back to basics. We are doing it for the first time, or we're taking over a channel, or we're just a refresher like, hey, we need to kind of clean house on social media. What should we be doing? The fourth step would be then turning to planning that content and planning our posting strategy. And once again, like everything else, I'm going to go over this pretty quickly. However, these are the things that I think you need to consider as you're planning content. So you've thought about, we haven't talked about, there is a step in there between audit and content strategy that really, I guess I probably should have 6 steps here. And that would be identifying your ideal customer profile, your audience personas. That would be kind of in between an audit and your content strategy, but things that you should consider when you're considering content. So I'll go ahead and add that. Consider what audience it's for. because that will influence all of these other things. The voice and tone that your content will need to follow, content pillars or campaigns. What you might have different content pillars or campaigns that your content falls under. And these could be things like different topics. These can be things like literal campaigns to promote different products or initiatives. Or these could be the content pillars could be related to you have 3 or 4 different ideal customer profiles, and they need to be the content needs to be unique for each of those or nuanced for each of those audience profiles. So, also thinking about the purpose of the content. Is it to inform? Is it to entertain? Is it to connect with people? I think this goes back to the conversation earlier about storytelling. You can tell stories to inform, you can tell stories to entertain, and you can tell stories to connect. So it's really less about the format of storytelling and more about what's the purpose of that. And then it can be purely promotional too. That's okay on social media. It shouldn't be always purely promotional, sell, sell, sell. But it can be every once in a while, that you have to have a call to action. You have to be promotional at some times on social media. Think about the different topic or message of the content. You could think about what type of content that will be. Is it text? Is it visual? Is it animation? Is it just links to something else? Is it a different type of content? And think about what best practices or brand style it will follow. So, different platforms we know have different things that they prefer as far as best practices. One that I used to harp on a lot that is changing subtly over time because the way the algorithms continue to change is I used to be very adamant that any kind of graphic that you were posting. It was okay probably on Facebook to have graphics or to have some words on images as long as you're using alt text to make it accessible. But Instagram, as far as Instagram feeds, I was very much a purist that Instagram just needed to be beautiful photos. Well, the algorithm has changed a little bit. We know the algorithms definitely prefers reels to anything right now. It also is very placing a high priority on shoppable posts. And so your feed probably is looking a little bit different, and you're probably seeing more graphics. I'm seeing a lot more graphics in my Instagram feed lately, but those are some examples of something that's like a best practice for a particular platform at a particular time that you might want to follow, or just again, your certain brand style, things that you will always do with your brand or will never do with your brand. Now, I will say for this content strategy, those are a lot of things to consider for each and every single piece of content. And different people approach this different ways when they're planning that content out. The way that I prefer and the way that we do it at Social Media Pulse Community is that we do have a editorial slash content calendar that we use, our planning tool. Christine, Deb, Paul, and I will use we use an Airtable, but you can accomplish this with lots of different tools. Just a basic spreadsheet will work too, where we have different columns on that particular tool that are identifying different things for each piece of content. We even identify like what's the objective. Is this an awareness objective? Are we trying to accomplish engagement with this piece of content, or are we trying to accomplish conversion? So there's a lot of different things to consider for pieces of content. And I will say that a spreadsheet or some kind of content calendar or planning tool for me, I like that. Sometimes you could do it just in like a table on a Word document or a Google Doc or something. But I do think that having a place where you can think about each one of the things that you want to consider for your content is pretty important to do. Moving on to once you think about all those different things for your content, right? Like we're going to post mostly graphics, and every once in a while we're going to post some video, and every once in a while we're going to post some links, and you've mapped it all out. Then you've got to think about when and how are we actually going to post this. And I really like this Venn um, uh, diagram of what I consider the three things that you should think about when you're thinking about actually posting your content. And that is, you want awesome content. You want awesome content that, yes, this Facebook user who I think, again, might be commenting from the group because I can't see your name. It just says Facebook. Um, Facebook user says, um, awareness, engagement, and conversion is the Royal Team triumvirate. And that, okay, I am a teacher and I like lots of big vocabulary words, and I just learned a new word today. So thank you very much to whomever is commenting that I can't see your name. There is a link to give Restream permission, and I need to find that somewhere. So I have permission to see your name. Let's find that link right here. Let me go ahead and copy this. I'm going to go ahead and copy and put this in the chat there. Oh, I can't comment back into a Facebook group. That's one of the challenges about streaming into a group. Into a page, it's much easier. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that link is chat.restream.io/FB to give me permission to see your name. Absolutely. Okay. And so thinking about posting, the thing that is, again, awesome content, perfect timing, and ideal frequency. So it's that Venn diagram where you're trying to figure out the things that, you want to hit that target right in the middle of awesome content, perfect timing, ideal frequency. And again, these can be very complicated to think about. And if you Google, and I didn't put this up in a slide, because if you Google, like, what are the best times to post on Instagram, that they'll give you some, you'll see some like global statistics about the best time, but the best thing that you can do is look at your own analytics to figure out when your audience is going to be active on social media. We're going to get to analytics in a minute, but take a look at those analytics to figure out when your audience is active on social media, to think about ideal timing. And then as far as the frequency of posts, a lot of times there used to be a trend toward, don't post too much because it'll kill your engagement. But as long as people are engaging, there's no such thing as posting too much. It's just a matter of what is sustainable for you and your organization. One of the tools that we use at Social Media Pulse Community to help us make sure that our timing and our frequency is right, we're responsible for the awesome content. Our team has done all the planning. We've got the awesome content, but we do get a little bit of help, and we cheat a little bit on timing and frequency because we use the Agorapulse tool with queued posts, which are great. We don't have to manually think about, are we, Christine is posting some content and Deb is posting some content and I'm posting some content and we're posting on top of each other. We can use queues that automatically put the content in the certain time slots that we've identified through analytics, using the analytics tool in Agorapulse to figure out when we need to post stuff. And also, of course, a calendar view in any kind of social media scheduling tool is helpful. We personally use Agorapulse. It's one that works really well for us in our organization. The final thing that we're going to get into today in the last few minutes of office hour, if you've got some questions, go ahead and put them into the comments. We can chat about those as well. This is one that, ironically, I like analytics. I like thinking and nerding out over data. And so analyzing, testing, and iterating is something that I really enjoy. But again, if you're new to social media, or you are just trying to figure out and do something from scratch, this part is the part that probably does not sound like much fun. Doing analytics, analyzing, testing, and iterating. We're not going to go into how we run analytics and what different metrics mean. We're not going to do that today. We're just going to kind of talk about the baseline things that you need to be thinking about as you are planning your social media strategy. And one thing I would like to pause and talk about right now is metrics versus analytics. And this is the metrics are the what, like what we're measuring to gauge performance. So those are things like our number of fans, our number of followers, our post reach, how many minutes of video people are watching, things like that. Those are the metrics. But that doesn't really tell you anything. It gives you a number. It's not the so what. And analytics are the so what of social media. It's the part where, if we think about it, think about the metric system, it's just the numbers. Analytics implies analysis, and it's how we as humans use those metrics to make decisions about how we're going to move forward. So I think that distinction is really important. I think understanding the difference, your metrics, they tell you information, but it's what you as the social media manager, it's what you as the human being can bring to those metrics that make you truly a strategic social media marketer. And that's what we all need to work toward. We're not just interns who somebody says, here's Twitter, go tweet for us. The old joke of the intern is running social media really doesn't fly anymore. Social media is an integral and strategic part of any kind of business strategy, and it should be, because it can drive business goals. So we have to bring more to the table than just raw numbers. We have to bring analysis to the table as well. So here are my steps for turning metrics into analytics, right? Because it can, again, thinking about this in terms of someone who hasn't done it before, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So turning metrics into analytics. Step one, you need to set some benchmarks. And those benchmarks can be things like trended benchmarks, basing numbers off of, okay, you're going to set goals or projections or standards based on what your page has done previously. You also could set aspirational benchmarks. You could take a look at leaders in your industry or in social and look at what they are doing and aspire and set goals to do something similar to what someone else is doing. So trended benchmarking, aspirational benchmarking. The third type of benchmarking would be earned benchmarking. So you can do a campaign and you can take a look at what your campaign does against a standard for success. There are lots of white papers and reports available that talk about average engagement rates or average open rates on things or average, and I dove a little bit into digital marketing more broadly there when I talked about open rates. But earned benchmarking would be comparing what you're doing versus a standard rather than trended, which would be based on yourself. It would be looking at an industry standard. And then also competitive benchmarking is when you're looking at direct competitors, using things like competitor analysis tool. Again, Agorapulse has one of those. It's pretty good that you can use to set your standards for performance or growth based on what competitors are doing. So setting benchmarks. It's really setting benchmarks in this next step of objectives, very, very similar to what we talked about when you're setting our objectives before we start. This is kind of where iteration comes into play. You can set those awareness, engagement, or conversion objectives based on the benchmarks. Then you're going to implement that strategy or campaign. This is the fun part. This is the part where we actually get to post and we actually get to engage and we actually get to create content and we actually get to do all those fun things that we think about when we think about being a social media manager. You finally get to do that on step 3 of turning metrics into analytics. Step 4, you're going to check those metrics and then run analytics, right? You're going to take the numbers, turn them into what does this mean for us? And then you're going to implement changes and start again. So for example, you set an objective. I can use office hour as an example. Something that we've started doing on Social Media Pulse community. We stream live into the community on various social media platforms. And I need to take a look at at the end of a certain period of time, take a look at the number of minutes watched, if we are converting people from those, if I'm posting any links with those videos, converting people to go watch in the community, or I take the clips from office hour and repost those and might set some benchmarks or some objectives rather, for how that content is performing. And maybe I'm comparing that content to other content that we're posting and we're weighing which content is the most successful at achieving our goals. So that's an example of turning metrics into analytics. So 5 steps there. And then finally, we're just going to summarize. And I do see there's at least one comment that I'll address here in the chat. So this is, in summary, the 5 things that we talked about today. So this is a good slide to, again, take a screenshot of, come back and watch the replay. We're going to set, when we're taking over from scratch, we are starting back at basics. They say, hey, we want you to run social media, these channels for this organization. You've never done it before. You're going to first set goals and objectives. Then you're going to choose networks that you need to be spending time on, considering that audience, time, and resources. You're going to conduct an audit. You're going to plan content, and then your posting strategy and execute that. And that's going to be amazing content, perfect timing, ideal frequency. Finally, you're going to analyze, test, and iterate with benchmarking, running a campaign, and then checking those analytics. So very, very complicated topic. Hopefully these 5 steps that are presented in a really clear order help make it a little bit less overwhelming if you're thinking about doing it for the first time. Appreciate you watching with us today. And I do have a question here that I'm going to go ahead and pop up. So somebody, again, I'm sorry, I can't see your name, but says one Facebook page I run has, say, 200 followers, but the same business's email list only has, say, 100 email addresses. What are some tactics I could use to increase my email list? Ideally, oh, it was some, they did sign it. Thank you. Ideally that my Facebook followers match my email addresses. Okay. So I'm Jonathan Gaby. Thank you very much for that comment. I'm going to throw that back up there. So I would say some tactics that you could use to increase your email list. And this is where we can be collaborative. We've got some people watching live with us so that we can, people throw out some suggestions for Jonathan here. But one of the things that's hard about matching email addresses from Facebook to email addresses that people have used to sign up is that oftentimes people sign up for Facebook using a different email address than they currently use to receive marketing related messages, which is tough. You know, people set up their Facebook accounts many, many years ago, and sometimes they're bad email addresses, but you can cross-reference that list. There are some ways to create some lookalike audiences with ads, things like that. But if we're just talking about organically matching up that Facebook, okay, let me think. What you could do creatively. You could ask people to sign up for your email list as a call to action on a Facebook post, and then that some of those people are following you. And there could be a way through a CRM to track. That gets a little bit more above my depth in terms of organic social media, but tracking and making sure that those email addresses are matching up, or how people are getting to your website or to your email list. And then also just asking people on your email if they follow you on social media, or linking back to your Facebook and trying to match that up would be some tactics that you could take. So I hope that helps. If anyone else has any suggestions, whether you're watching the replay or you're here live, go ahead and drop those in the comments down below. Yep, do that with a call to action button. Yeah, your call to action button on the top of your Facebook could be sign up for your newsletter right there as the call to action. So I hope today was a good, not too overwhelming, but in-depth enough overview of steps to establish a social media strategy from scratch. I'm really, really glad that you have joined us here today, or if you're watching the replay. And if you are not a member of the Social Media Pulse community, that is something that I will plug here at the end. And that would be a good question to put in the Social Media Pulse community, Jonathan, to see what other people have as suggestions. Go ahead and go to socialmediapulse.community and you can, I'm trying to see if I've got, I guess I don't have it here as a, oh, here it is. Yeah, there we go. Join Social Media Pulse. You can go to socialmediapulse.community, join completely free community, all kinds of great opportunities to interact, ask questions, take courses through Pulse Academy. And then also we have a job board, great content and news that comes out. So it's a one-stop shop for everything you need to know to be a social media manager. Thanks so much for joining us here today, and I will see you next time.